Nottingham, trying my very best to improve my kayaking skills. So I was going every single week down to HBP, and the picture in the top left there is, you might notice it, it's Matlock. And actually that's the one rock in Matlock that I think everybody, if they've not paddled there before and they're quite new to kayaking, actually tends to find on their way down and inevitably end up upside down and having a little swim. So I spent a lot of time in that first year at Nottingham, learning the hard way, really. I spent a lot of time swimming. I spent a lot of time realizing, you know, if you don't edge, what happens, etc. And actually I owe a lot to the people who looked after me that year, and really helped me to learn how to roll and helped me to get better at kayaking. So that was 6 years ago since I was living in New Zealand, and I feel that I've progressed quite a lot in that time. And I've actually, in the last few years, started going down the leadership routes in kayaking. So what I wanted to talk to you about today was leadership from a woman's perspective in kayaking, but actually split it into two ways. So I do want to talk about leadership on the water, and particularly the leadership courses that I've taken part in or want to take part in. And also I want to talk about leadership in women off the water, because I think that is equally important and has a big effect actually on leadership on the water as well. So when I had my year in Nottingham, I left, and I actually left to start teaching in Birmingham. And when I was in Birmingham, I then had a car and I had a lot more independence for kayaking. So I had the freedom to start kayaking every weekend that I wanted to, and go to the rivers that I wanted to. So I got a lot better quite quickly, just because I was actually getting more time on real rivers, not just at home pier points. And those skills increased a lot. But what I also started doing was I actually got involved with the university club, so Birmingham University Kayak Club. I was looking for like-minded people that I could go kayaking with at the weekend. And when I got in touch and said, oh, I have a car, they said, please, please, please come and help us out. So I've spent a lot of time with Birmingham University Kayak Club, and I have a lot of time for them actually. I think they're a fantastic club and they're really good at getting beginners into kayaking. And one of the things I definitely noticed when I started helping them out was I started assisting with leading. So I didn't lead whole groups by myself straight away, but I would lead with another person. And there was a big shift for me that actually, for the first time, rather than just being a beginner myself who had to be looked after, I was actually being seen as a leader. And the beginners who were with the university club, who had no experience, saw me and they trusted me. And I liken it to the same way that I looked up to other people in New Zealand. So the men and women who had helped me out in New Zealand, and I just thought, you know, the fact that they didn't come out of their kayaks when they crossed an eddy line, I just thought was the most amazing thing in the whole world. And actually, because I could roll and because I had a bit of boat control, beginners were looking up to me in that same way. And for me, that was a big sort of change in mindset, because I realized that firstly, I'd actually improved quite a lot, but also I saw myself differently in that I saw myself as a leader on the water. And it changed the dynamics a little bit. Rather than just having to look out for myself when I went kayaking, I was now more involved in the group. I was looking out for other people, and actually help them to improve their kayaking as well. And I do think having a role model to look up to is something that's very, very important. And obviously, when we're beginners, anybody who has any more skills than we do tends to be a role model. So when you're learning to roll, or you're learning to brace, or even just doing things like learning to put your spray skirt on by yourself, people who can do that, you're just like, wow, you know, I wish I could do that. And I'm very, very lucky. And actually, as a woman, I have a lot of female role models that I look up to myself, and a lot of female friends who actually I go kayaking with. And I know I'm very lucky in that regard, in that I have just so many female kayaking friends, because not everybody does. And some of these pictures that I've got on the slide now are just me and my various friends on different kayaking days. But actually, not everybody is as lucky as I am to have those strong role models for themselves, or close friends that they can confide in and help them out and help them with their own kayaking journey. And actually, that's a little bit of why I think She Paddles is so important. So if you haven't heard of it before, She Paddles is the British canoeing campaign. And it's looking at trying to get more women involved in kayaking, connect women within kayaking to try and bridge the gap between men and women in kayaking, because there is a difference between how many women are involved and how many men are involved. And actually, when I started helping out with Birmingham, and when I started helping out with more people, I began to see myself as a bit of a role model for people, I suppose a bit of a leader for people in some ways to look up to. And actually, I think for some women, they didn't have that in other places. And it wasn't until I was having conversations with people that I realised how many women actually don't have sort of strong female support within their own kayaking networks. And actually, something like the She Paddles campaign can be really beneficial to them for connecting them to other women who can help them out. So I actually write a kayaking blog just for fun, really, but it seems to have gone down quite well with a lot of people. And actually, even though there are less women in paddle sports than there are men, my blog actually has just over 50% female readership. And I actually get a lot of people contact me, so message me on my social media or through my blog, just to talk about kayaking. Lots of messages of people saying that they found certain things really helpful, or they also, things that I've shared that I find challenging, they also find challenging, and they found it helpful that I had shared that I found it challenging because it helped them to relate to that. And actually, being able to help various people in that regard has been a bit of a mindset change for me, because I think I've got quite a self-depreciating sense of humour, but actually to have a lot of people get in contact and say, I read your blog on swimming and it's made me feel so much more confident in my own swimming and things like that, has been really nice to see that it's actually helping people, I suppose. So the picture on the right there is a wonderful lady called Beth Morgan, and she's one of the, in my opinion, best female kayakers in the UK. She works for World Class Kayaking Academy, and she's actually one of my biggest personal role models as well. So last year I wanted to go to Norway over the summer with some friends. I was a bit nervous because Norway seems like it's going to be really big and scary, and I wasn't sure if I was capable of going. And actually a few things fell through, people couldn't make it. And I thought, rather than not going to Norway at all, I might sign up to do a course, so I could still go to Norway and also perhaps work on some skills. So I signed up for a course with Paddle 365, and Beth was working with Jamie at the time, who was running the course. And it was really, really strange because I didn't really know Beth before I'd gone on this course, but I just felt like I couldn't connect with her. And I looked up to her so much, and I could just trust her and be really open about my kayaking. And I can get very, very nervous when I'm kayaking. If I'm scared, I tend to just go quite quiet and keep it to myself, and I don't want to bother anybody with it. But actually, I felt with Beth, I could trust her and be open about the worries I was having or the fears I was having. And because I had that sort of open connection and conversation with her, it helped me so much in that week. And I really think just having that week's coaching, and it was as much almost mental coaching as it was in terms of my physical skills, but I took so much away from it. But I do think the biggest thing I took away from it was a big increase in my confidence in my own abilities. And that really is because of the connection I'd had with Beth and being able to trust her and have her guidance and have her sort of mentoring me for that week. And it was such a powerful thing for me to then take away And actually, when I came back after just a week there, I did feel that I had improved quite a lot. And I was getting to the point that I felt I'd improved a lot of my kayaking. I was helping a lot with the university groups. And actually, I decided I wanted to have some goals to aim for. So perhaps go looking into coaching or to leadership. And so a couple months later, I decided I was going to sign up to do Whitewater River Leader training, and my picture on the left is when I had the training weekend. I'm not sure what it is about doing courses like this, but it always seems to happen that it's like -5 degrees when you do the course and you're practicing boat rescues and things like that. But I had a really good weekend on the training, and actually when I came to do the assessment, it took me a little while because I'm a teacher and I have quite a lot of not a lot of free time really. But I got to the point where I was doing the assessment, and it was about a year later, and I felt very, very nervous before I did my assessment, like unrealistically nervous. I knew I was capable of doing it, but it didn't stop me really doubting myself before I got to that assessment point. And even, you know, rational me trying to talk it through of, you lead people on every week or every 2 weeks, you are capable of doing this. It didn't stop me thinking, oh, why am I doing this? I'm not good enough. All the people I know are so much better than me. This isn't for me. And actually, it was ridiculous, these thoughts I was having, because when I got to do my assessment, I ended up just having a really, really fun weekend. So I was actually the only female on my course at the time. It was me and 3 other guys. The picture on the top right is just a selfie I had with 2 of the guys. We just had a bit of a Oreo snacksident in the eddy whilst we were waiting for the other guy to go down with the group, and we were having a bit of a chat. But they were such lovely people on this course, and actually it was such a fun weekend, and I found it, not to downplay it or anything, but I found it easier than I thought I was going to. It was just like every time I went with the university group, only this time I had somebody watching me whilst I was doing it. But I was quite relaxed all weekend, and it was actually really nice, the people I was doing the assessment with and the guinea pigs who were taking part as well. We all stayed in touch afterwards, and I've paddled with a few of them since then. But actually, it was so much easier than I thought it was going to be, that afterwards I did think to myself, well, why is it that I was actually nervous in the first place? And one of the pieces of feedback that I had when I was having my debrief after the course was, well, not everybody finds it easy. And for me, that made me think, well, why was it that I was worried about taking that assessment in the first place? Why was it that I doubted myself? And I was having a chat to a couple of the people at British Canoeing, and I just asked them for some stats on people who've taken part in courses, the leadership courses, so over 2019, because obviously 2020 has been a bit of an unusual year. And actually, what I got from that was, for the Whitewater River Leader, the people who complete the assessment and had actually been certificated, I think that's a word, had received a certificate for that, only 10% of them were women. So when I heard that statistic, I was really surprised, because I thought there was far more women who actually did that. And also, I suppose, a little bit proud of myself that I had actually gone ahead and taken that assessment and been okay with it. And I started to reflect, well, why is it that I was so nervous? Why is it that I was so reluctant in the first place to actually do that assessment, when I clearly had worked up and had built up the skill set to be able to do so? And I think a lot of it, for me personally, and perhaps for other women, was just a lot of self-doubt. So I had a huge self-doubt in my own abilities, despite the rational side of myself being able to say, you do have that skill set, or you do have those abilities to complete this. And a real reluctance, I suppose, to put myself forward. And I think I'm quite lucky to have some very talented friends I go paddling with but I'm always comparing myself to them. And so in my head, if I'm not as good as friend A or friend B, then I'm probably not good enough to do this assessment. And actually, the thing that helped me to overcome that self-doubt and those worries was actually having a very, very strong support network. So that was professionals within the paddle sports community who said to me, you should do this, you're more than capable. And also a lot of very good friends who said exactly the same thing to me. Come on, you're more than capable, you can do it, you've got this. And actually them having that faith in me that I could do it eventually rubbed off, and I had faith in myself. And I'm very glad that I then went ahead and did that assessment. And I was so pleased about like the results and how well the weekend had gone and how much fun it had been as well. And I actually did this in one of my half terms last year. So I had a few days left over afterwards in North Wales, and it happened to be very, very wet. So after the 2-day assessment, I then went paddling with some friends for the next few days. And we were going and doing all sorts of rivers, and one of which was the Upper Maldac, which is quite a challenging river, and it's got a little bit of a reputation. So again, beforehand, I was like, oh, I'm not sure, this river is probably a bit big for me. And actually it was pushy for me, but I was absolutely fine. And afterwards, my friends were saying, oh, well done, Del, you smashed it, fantastic, you did so well. And straight away I'm like, oh, I think I survived it, I'm not sure about smashing it. And they're like, why are you putting yourself down? Like, you didn't swim, you did all the big rapids, you did really well on this, you did well. And actually, I'm so lucky to have these kind of people in my life. And like I said, it is my friends, but it's also people across the kayaking community. So professionals, coaches and leaders, and even just people that I really look up to. Like I mentioned Beth Morgan earlier, but other people like that who are role models for me, actually giving me that encouragement. And I'm not sure if I didn't have all those people encouraging me in my life, whether I would have the confidence to have gone ahead and done like my Whitewater River Leader assessment. And it's a shame, because I do think that perhaps not everybody has that kind of support network. And I'm going to bring it back to She Paddles again, because I do think that this is such a supportive aspect for women, for other women in the community. And it is something very specific about women, really, that I'm sure there are plenty of men who are feeling the same way, and they have self-doubt. And I don't want to say that you don't, but I have noticed that with my female friends, we have this habit that we put ourselves down and we doubt ourselves when perhaps we shouldn't. And I think with She Paddles, it is so supportive for women to connect with other women and actually realize that they are capable of doing these things. And it is a little bit bizarre sometimes when I look at my own role models. So I did write a blog actually about 5 women that I really looked up to. Beth Morgan was one of them. Sal Montgomery was another lady. And they're people that I look up to and I aspire to. But it is strange to possibly think that maybe other people look up to me as well. And it is a really odd position to be in. But I do joke with my friends that I get so excited when I meet female kayakers in particular. I love all the women out there who do canoeing and supping and everything else, but it's the kayakers who I'm going to go kayaking with. And when I meet female kayakers, if I get on with them, I'm always talking to people in eddies and on the side of rivers and so on. I tend to sort of pick people up a little bit. So I've met quite a few women, like, on the Get On for the D or something like that, where there's so many people there. And I'm just like, oh, you're a girl and you go kayaking? Oh, maybe you should add me on Facebook. We should go kayaking sometime. And actually, it's really nice to just make those connections all the time. And I do hope that, in doing those kind of things and actually reaching out to people, that it might be that someone who was in my position and looking up to people like Beth and Sal, that maybe I can actually help them out a little bit by doing this and give them those connections and build up their confidence. And there was actually a lovely, lovely lady who was one of the mock students on our Whitewater River Leader assessment. And she was so nice. And afterwards, I just said, you have to add me on Facebook. Let's go kayaking. And she's quite busy. She's a nurse and I'm a teacher, but we actually managed to make it happen over the summer and went for a kayaking trip, just us two. And it was so lovely to have that time. And again, she has everything that I feel I have. So she's actually a very, very good kayaker, but her own self-doubt and her perhaps lacking in confidence about her own skills held her back a little bit. So to be able to give her that time back and actually help her work on her own skills was really nice to be able to sort of give that back, having had so many people give it to me in the first place. So I do want to have future goals as well to take this on a little bit further. And one of the things that I did over, well, this was about a week before I think the country went into lockdown last March, I decided to do an advanced whitewater safety and rescue. It'd been a few years since I'd done my original whitewater safety and rescue, and I felt I had progressed so much in my own kayaking in that time that perhaps my safety skills could probably have done with a bit of a refresher. So I had a lovely, lovely weekend. The top left photo is myself. It was myself and 3 older gentlemen on the course, and the provider as well. And we had such a great weekend. If you haven't done an advanced whitewater safety rescue, I do recommend doing one. There's a lot of fun and you learn a lot, and it's very hands-on. You get very, very involved. And actually, on one of the times we were having a bit of a discussion, and it did come up on why was it that perhaps women didn't do as many of these leadership courses or didn't get involved with advanced whitewater safety and rescue and so on. And one of the gentlemen suggested that in his club and his experience, perhaps women didn't want to be involved with the rescues. They wanted to leave it to the men. And we all kind of just looked at each other, and one of the others said, "Oh, is that why Del's been so involved all weekend and been running around showing us how it's done?" And we just had to laugh because it was so true. If women didn't want to get involved, then they wouldn't. And perhaps it's, he didn't mean it in a negative way, but perhaps that mindset that women don't want to get involved does potentially lead women who want to get involved but don't have that confidence to actually take that first step, can perhaps discourage them a little bit, because they need that encouragement from people and from role models that they look up to actually say, you can do this, you've got this, come on, give it a go, let me help you with this. So we had a really interesting discussion about that between the 4 of us, and we had such a lovely weekend. And at the end of the weekend, the provider actually said, "Well, I assume you're doing this course because you're going on to do your 5-star or your advanced not advanced whitewater safety rescue, your advanced whitewater river leader." And I just straight away was like, "Oh no, you've seen me kayak. Surely that's not for me. That's for the really good kayakers. I'm not that person." And he was just like, "Yes, you are. Like, give it another year or 2, maybe a couple more seasons, but you've got that in you. You're capable." And it's so strange to have someone see something in you that you find so hard to see yourself. And actually, after he said that, I did start trying to reflect on my kayaking in a more neutral way. And I thought, well, maybe I am capable of doing that. I do like to have goals. I don't think it's something I could do tomorrow. I think if I took an assessment for an advanced whitewater river leader tomorrow, I would probably not pass it. But I do like to have a goal, and it's something that I would like to do in the long term and would like to work towards. And actually, that's potentially something I wouldn't have considered if somebody hadn't said to me, "Well, why don't you do it?" Or, "I think you're capable of this." And actually, when I spoke with British Canoeing and said about their whitewater river leader courses and their advanced whitewater river leader courses, I was completely shocked, because in 2019, on paper anyway, I'm not sure if maybe someone has done it, but there was actually 0 women recorded for having done an advanced whitewater river leader course and got the certificate for it. And I think the thing that shocked me wasn't that that number was 0, but it was that I know so many capable women who could do it, in my opinion, women who I think are far better paddlers, far more experienced paddlers than I am. And the question I think to myself is, well, what is stopping them? Because they are perfectly capable of doing this. And this is something I've now really set my mind on. And I think COVID has slightly got in the way of what I would like to do and where I'd like to be right now. But it's something I want to do. It's something that probably is my biggest goal at the moment, that and trying to learn how to loop my playboat, but that's another story. And actually, trying to think about what is holding these women back is something that is really taken over my thoughts recently. And I think it comes back to actually the women are capable, and there are women who can do these things, but it's having that support network and having those people actually push them and say, you have got this. Anyway, I've realised I've talked quite a lot already, but there was one thing I wanted to sort of end on. And I think sometimes it's very, very hard to look at ourselves and see the progress that we make, especially when we've got goals that perhaps aren't quite within our reach yet. And we're so focused on that, we're so focused on what we can't do yet, that sometimes we forget to look back and see how far we've actually come. And actually, if I think back to 6 years ago when I just started in New Zealand and somebody had to tell me, you know, which way I was holding my paddles because I couldn't work out it for myself. If I thought that girl in New Zealand, if she looked back now or looked at me now and actually saw me, if I tried to think back, well, what would I think of myself now? I actually think that girl from New Zealand 6 years ago would probably be quite inspired by the girl that I am now, probably quite proud as well. And sometimes we just need a little bit of perspective to remind ourselves that even if we're not quite where we want to be yet, actually the journey we've been on so far is phenomenal. And everybody's journey will be personal and different to themselves. But actually that journey itself is something that you should be proud of. Right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hopefully come back to the videos. So I hope you found some of that interesting. I know I get a little bit carried away when I talk sometimes, but if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm aware I talked about lots of different topics.
Yes, Del. Paul had a question for you. So if I can ask Paul to unmute himself and ask his question, and then I'll come to Andy then as well, please.
Caroline's got a question. So
yeah, Caroline, I've seen you've got a question. I'll put you on the list. Is Paul there? Can he unmute himself? Can I ask a question, Sarah?
Yeah, do you want to scroll up so I can find it? So Paul's question was peer pressure, as in to do bigger or harder water, a feature of university club paddling? And if so, would you say it discourages women from developing as paddlers? The thing is, it might not be Paul, it might be someone using Paul's. So that was the question.
Yeah, I suppose I get where that question's coming from, because there are perhaps groups of people that I see, and generally groups of guys, I don't want to stereotype anyone there, but groups of guys where they egg each other on, come on, you've got this, you've got this. And actually my experience of university clubs is that they are very safe. I would absolutely, particularly Birmingham University, I think was just fantastic in how it introduced people to whitewater, how it looked after people on whitewater. And there's very much a safe aspect. So in terms of beginning in the club, I don't think there was that peer pressure. And at Nottingham as well, you spend all your time at Home Pier Point, which to be honest is as safe as you can get when it comes to UK rivers, because it's so deep, unlike every other UK river. I do think once you sort of progress past almost the club trips and you start doing personal trips, that perhaps there is an element of peer pressure. But for myself personally, I've never actually found that. And I have some really wonderful friends. I have some fantastically talented friends, and I've never had anyone pressure me to do anything. I've had people tell me when I've been perhaps nervous before getting on that you are capable of this, but it is your choice. And one of my favourite phrases actually that some of my Birmingham friends use is, "You do you." And there's never any pressure to walk a river, to walk a rapid. And actually, we went to Scotland with those same Birmingham friends over the summer. It was very, very wet, and there was a lot of quite challenging water. And actually, we had no issues in just walking some of it as a group and saying, we could do this, but we're having a good day. Let's not push ourselves, and let's just walk around that very big, scary hole and go on to the next rapid. So no, personally, I don't think I've ever actually experienced peer pressure from the university groups.
Andy, do you want to just make the point that you put into the chat, because I think it's a very, very valid point, and I agree with it.
Yeah, and I don't want to risk falling into a stereotype, but my experience of female candidates coming through for assessment, hi Sam, is that I've just seen, sorry, is that they are prepared for their assessment day. So it was really nice to hear you recount your assessment with Tony Clark as one of the others. So how you got through that, I don't know. But your description of that was as it should be. It was another day on the river doing what you do, with somebody looking over your shoulder and saying, yeah, that's the level that it should be for this award. It's not fellas turn up thinking, well, I can't do that, that and that. If I wing it, I'll probably get away with that. And as an assessor, you know exactly what they can and can't do. And you spend the day dancing around that knowledge of what people are capable of doing and deciding whether they've got enough to be at the level. But my experience of females coming through for assessment is that they've got it boxed off before they turn up. And as you say, there's probably a lot of them are not presenting to be told they're at the level, which is what an assessment is. And if maybe if there were a few more without beards doing the assessments, that might make it easier for females to come through and present to say, am I at the right level? But unfortunately, at the moment, there's not many. We're waiting on you, Del, to be one of the assessors.
Oh, so, yeah, well, thank you. That's really interesting to hear from your perspective about that, because I did worry from my own experience that maybe women just hold off too long to put themselves forward for it. That's definitely the impression I got from doing my own assessment, was I could have done it a lot sooner. But then again, maybe I wouldn't have had such an enjoyable weekend if I'd done it when I was just ready as opposed to more than ready. But yeah, that's really interesting what you've just said. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Andy said there wholeheartedly. And personally, I think that the changes in the leadership awards and how the assessments will be conducted is going to help everybody. And I think it will show up the people that are just trying to wing it. So I think it's a really positive thing, the new assessments. Caroline, did you have a question you wanted to ask? You're next one on my list.
Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Del. It's a very interesting talk. Thank you very much. I'm very well presented, I have to say.
Thank you.
I'm going to first start by saying that I am a Birmingham University graduate, and that is where I started canoeing. But it was many years ago. In fact, so many frightening number of years ago. I gave up. I was quite a good paddler. I paddled for about 10 years, and then I gave up to have children. And recently got back into it. And what I'm finding, my difficulty really in it is, I feel that I'm too weak, physically weak, to be rescuing boats and pulling boats out of rivers full of water and dragging paddlers, out. And that's what actually limits me from thinking, give it a go more in leadership. I'm usually there looking for a strong man to get the flipping boat out the water and stuff. So I don't know whether you've got anything to say about that, but I think it is a very physical sport, and what with the water being so cold as well. I never feel as though I'm in a decent position to be rescuing and leading people.
Yeah, Well, thank you for your question. I do think, well, I personally, I probably am quite strong just because I do it so often. So I live about a mile from home pier point. So when it's open, it's currently closed. I'm going about 3 times a week. And so because of that, I am a bit stronger. But I paddle with some very, very strong guys. And I do worry about being the weaker one of the group. And that was one of my main worries actually before I did my assessment was, how am I going to, lift water-filled boats? How am I going to be able to keep up with the guys on the course? And actually some tips that I've had from various people, I think it was Chris Brain might have given me this one of, everybody does this silly thing where a boat's full of water and they're like, quick, I'll get my sling out and my carabiner and I'll tow it all the way across the river and up the eddy. And actually he's like, well, why don't you empty the boat first? So in terms of things like boat rescues, I actually try to find little cheat ways. I never ever attach a carabiner to a boat when I'm trying to rescue a swimmer. I try and empty it a little bit, so pulling it on its side, pull it up a bit, and I just push it and butt it into an eddy. And actually at home pier point, I find it quite difficult to rescue boats just because the water can flow quite quickly. And sometimes it might take me the entire course to rescue a boat, but I do get there eventually just by not panicking and gently nudging the boat until I get it into an eddy. I did actually have to rescue my mother from a duo over the summer. She decided after 5 years that she would quite like to see what all the fuss was about. She'd never seen me kayaking before. And so one of my friends took her down in a duo, and just at the last moment, they capsized and they both swam. And I managed to get my mother, my friend, the duo, and 2 paddles out by myself just in a little ozone. And it wasn't because I was, pulling the duo out. I just kept nudging it until it got to the bank and then gave it a bit of a pull on the side. But I do completely understand what you're saying, because it is something that I worry about. And I try to think that if I can't be the strongest person in the group, particularly with some of the people I paddle with, but sometimes I try and think that maybe I could be the smartest person in the group and think about leading in different ways. So rather than necessarily, pulling the boats out from the side or whatever, I have a little look, are there any bigger eddies further down the river that I could push it into instead of trying to pull it across to the other side? Or perhaps if there's somebody who's had a couple of swims already, it might be sort of taking him down the easiest route on the river and things like that. But yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, because it is something I feel myself, and I think a lot of people would actually think I'm quite strong, and I still worry about that myself.
Thank you.
Caroline, there's a couple of interesting things that you said there. One of the things I'd like to pick up on is that you're coming back to paddling after having a family, and it's probably been in the last year that I've been, through doing a lot of the guide modules, becoming really aware of so many people, so many women coming back to paddling after having a family. And I think that's one thing that over the last few months, I think She Paddlers is something that they could really help with addressing. And I'm looking at Nat here, because I know she's been struggling with this a little bit as well. I don't think she'll mind me saying. So yeah, I think as a paddling community, we should do more to support that. And Del, I know you're a strong paddler, and I get intimidated when I paddle with my daughter-in-law. So I get exactly what you're saying.
I think I'd be intimidated paddling with your daughter-in-law. Quite formidable.
Yeah. Caroline, have you done a Foundation Safety and Rescue course?
Yes, I have done the Safety and Rescue course. I did it at Plassey Brennan. Oh, wait a minute. I think yes, the Whitewater Safety and Rescue course, where we had to jump in and be rescued and rescue people and that sort of thing. Yes, I think it was I just can't remember what it was, but we did the basic one, and then I think I did the advanced one. I think so, yeah. I think my problem as well, just to say, I think it's similar to what Del said, that there's not many women to paddle with, and I do have paddling friends, but I'm inevitably the only woman on on the course or on the trip or whatever. And yeah, and I think it's been really good to sort of get a bit more involved with some of the women in some of these groups. So as Del said, I think that's quite important.
Yes, I agree with that. I must say we're quite lucky, because we're actually running a 40-60% split between men and women on our courses in general over the last 2 years probably. So, you know, we are seeing definitely the benefits of She Paddle.
Yeah, no, I was just saying to find something. I know Del will probably, but just on the women's community paddling page on Facebook, so many of us put, you know, is anyone in the such and such region, and so many people, you know, have said, oh yes, I'm there, and very quickly arranged to meet up. So it might be worth giving that a go.
Yes.
Madison, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question that is really just building off of Paul's question. But I was wondering if you ever felt pressure from assessment groups or just like casual groups of paddlers that were mainly men to do bigger runs or just paddle at a level that was higher than maybe you're comfortable with. And I'm just wondering what your experience is with that.
Yeah, I think perhaps I'm a bit unusual in that all the pressure I feel in kayaking seems to come from myself. And actually, the people I tend to paddle with are very, very supportive. I've never had anyone put pressure on me. I've never felt that people have put pressure on me, really. But I do put pressure on myself. And it's strange because when I go down to even like Home Pier Point, when I'm by myself, I'm really comfortable. And then as soon as other people are around, I feel this pressure that perhaps I should be kayaking better, I should perform better. And sometimes I think this can hold me back. But it's not pressure from anybody else, it's pressure from myself. And actually I have noticed that when I started kayaking, I had to kind of remind myself to calm down, that you know, when you start kayaking and you're swimming on grade 2 and there's very low consequence, and then you get a bit better and you go up a couple of grades, and actually I have to remind myself of, it's not going to be pleasant if you swim this. I know you're feeling confident, but maybe if you're not 100% confident, I shouldn't get on. Whereas now it's almost gone the other way, in that I see things, I see rapids that I know I'm capable of. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Orkney in Scotland, but there's 2 quite classic grade 5 rapids on there. And I've yet to run either of them, because every time I go, I can see my line. I feel so confident I could do it. And there's just something that holds myself back. And maybe if I didn't know they were grade 5, if I called them grade 4 rapids, I would do them every time and things would be fine. But in my head, I'm like, oh, that's grade 5. Maybe I shouldn't. I should leave that. I should leave that to the better paddlers in my group. And I've never had any pressure from people to do things that I don't want to. And actually, in some ways, I think my friends are too supportive, because I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. And they're like, don't worry, you don't have to do it. Whereas maybe actually sometimes what I need is someone to go, you can do this. But it is a difficult thing, with particularly when you get higher up the grades of rapids, because that decision really needs to come from yourself. But no, I must just be very lucky to never have had that. But I just have some awesome friends who actually are so supportive, and they never put pressure on me in that way.
And then just a quick follow-up,
yeah.
Because I feel like I really relate to that, putting pressure on yourself. So how do you deal with that pressure that you do put on yourself?
So whenever it gets too bad, like perhaps I'm thinking, one example for me is at Home Pier Point. It also happens to be where all of the GB freestyle team are constantly training, and I can just about stay upright in a hole in a playboat, and I'm trying very hard to get better at doing spins and loops. But when they're all there doing, I can't even name all the moves, but all the flippy floppies in the world, I'm like, oh no, I can't get in the way of their training. I'm not good enough. I should stay out the way so they can focus. I don't want to embarrass myself. And when I have those kind of thoughts, I just have to say, stop it. Why do you kayak? You kayak for fun. And if you're not having fun, then you wouldn't do it. So stop putting this pressure on yourself. Nobody cares. Like the people, the GB team who are training at Home Pier Point, they're probably just happy that my run's going to last about 10 seconds and then they get to go again. Or if it lasts a bit longer, they get a bit more of a break. And actually, everybody's always so encouraging that I just have to remind myself why I'm doing it, and I'm doing it because I enjoy it. And then when I have that reminder, then I enjoy it again. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Hi Dale, we've had a question from Kirsty, but she's having a few problems with her internet. So
Okay.
she says, I've had some difficulties in the past with a range of outdoor assessments where I've had to put my foot down with male candidates who don't or won't follow my instructions. Afterwards, I felt so guilty about being assertive, but the assessors said it was the right thing to do. Have you experienced this at all? I find it difficult being assertive.
Oh, absolutely. I completely get her question, because I certainly have had that experience myself. I think I have a bit of an unfair advantage in that I've now been teaching long enough that if someone is behaving that way, the teacher in me just comes out. So it actually happened on my assessment. It was friends in my group, a lovely man called Dean Macken from Paddle Plus Canoe Club, and he was in the mock students, and he's my friend. We've known each other for like 5 years, but just as I was taking over the leading and I was giving them a bit of a debrief about the next, well, a pre-brief, not a debrief, about the next rapid, and he was busy talking to the person next to him, and I could feel the assessor behind me. So I was like, Dean, can you make sure you listen, please? And it just came out. I didn't mean to. I teached him completely, but he kind of jumped. He was like, oh, okay. And then he listened, and we're having a giggle about it afterwards. I was like, I'm really sorry I teached you, Dean. And he's like, no, that's fine. But it just got his attention. And I think sometimes being assertive isn't a bad thing. And people, particularly women, might see being assertive as being rude, and actually it's not. It's just being assertive. And the male candidates perhaps might not have that same issue, because they generally have, more deeper, more booming voices. They might get your attention that way. But I do think perhaps as a woman, sometimes you just have to be firm about what you want to go ahead, and not worry about that. At the end of the day, everybody wants their leader, their teacher, whoever's kind of in charge, to be in charge. And if you can be the person who shows you're in charge, actually, I think that's quite a reassuring quality about someone who is leading you or looking after you.
Yeah, I think that was probably the teaching you coming out there, Del.
Yes.
But and I'm sure Andy will agree with me here, is when we're watching assessments, quite a few male candidates will try and score points. They'll try and add something in, oh, and he forgot this or he forgot that, and where they think it's about scoring points and not actually just performing. And that frustrates me as well. And Andy's nodding. So Sophia's made a really good point. Do you fancy unmuting and coming on with your point?
Yeah, hi Dale. I don't kayak. I've had to go at stand-up paddleboarding recently, but I work for AIM and we provide liability cover for quite a lot of activity providers. Work quite closely with Dave, so I love coming to Paddle Chat. One of the benefits of being more geriatric than you and getting older is that I think you do get to a certain stage where you don't care as much about what other people think. No, seriously, you don't, and you get a lot more confidence. And I used to be very non-confident, and I do think it comes with age. I do a lot of running, and I run with quite a few blokes. And I always find that I always feel that I'm having to keep up with them. And then at the end of the run, I find that they've been trying to keep up with me, which is quite funny. But, they're taller than me. They've got bigger lung capacity and stuff. So there is very much the difference between the genders. But I loved what you were saying about the Team GB people, because that's just hilarious. They're sort of elite, and that's good. But I would just like to reassure you that you've probably got bags more confidence than you think, and just go for it.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Okay, I'm going to let Lewis come on and ask a question, because he's going to give our business a plug as well, which is I can't miss that opportunity, can I?
Oh no, you put me on the spot. Just a quick one, really. It's something that's been kind of in my mind for quite some time, about running female-only courses. But as a male, running that course, I'm also hitting a bit of a wall with kind of how it would be perceived, I guess, in a way. but the last course I ran with Dave was female only, and it was amazing. It was really, really good course. It was a canoe course, and the ladies on the course were they started off quite intimidated by other men they've paddled with, basically, was the way it kind of came out. And then over the stage of the course, it kind of came out they were actually a lot better than they thought they were or been told they were. I think this is definitely an issue, and I'm thinking of running more and more female only courses, but I just wonder if it's something that's not worth doing, because obviously it's worth doing, but is it something that women would want to do with a male coach, or is it something you would rather do with a female coach?
I think it's a bit of both, really. So I've been on a couple of female only courses, and actually the last one I went on was like an introduction to women's freestyle day at Hurley with Jacko, and Otti was there as well, but it was very much Jacko was kind of running the course and Otti was there as the role model and to give a bit of coaching. And I do think having someone like Otti there was really helpful as a role model, and someone to talk to. But I felt perfectly comfortable with Jacko as well, giving me the coaching advice. And obviously he's very, very good at freestyle coaching. But I think the thing that I really enjoyed about that particular day was the fact that the other participants were women. And I didn't think I was someone who would be like, oh, I want to go on a women's only course. But actually now I've had a couple of experiences of them, I really see the benefits in it. So the day we did for freestyle, we were at Hurley, and I'd never paddled at Hurley before. And I'd also not been in a freestyle boat for 4 years. And somebody lent me a small jet, and I was a little bit overweighted for it. And I thought, oh my goodness, how's this day going to go? And actually in the car park before we got on, it was 10 of us. We were all feeling exactly the same, and it was so reassuring to have everybody say, I'm quite nervous, oh, this is what I'm worried about, what are you worried about? And actually I think there was that very safe space. And like you say, perhaps if you have male participants there, I have noticed that out of my own friendship group, when we get to rapids that we are worried about, the women are the ones going, I'm a bit worried. My male friends, it seems to come out in humour. They're like, yeah, let's send it, whilst also being very worried. But I do think sometimes males might know that's a joke, but the reassurance having other people, and that might be women, it might be other males as well, but saying, I'm really scared too. Let's just do this together. That was such a lovely aspect of the day. So actually, I do think you would get a good reception. And there's been a few comments tonight about perhaps women not knowing other women. And if you run courses like that, not only are you giving them that safe space, oh, is that your daughter? She's lovely.
It's my son.
No, sorry. It was cut up at the back. But not only are you giving women that safe space, but you're also giving them that opportunity to network as well, which I think is really valuable.
Cool, thanks for that. I mean, if anybody is interested in doing those courses, tap me and Dave up and get signed up to them, and we'll start running them for you.
Yeah, thank you, Lewis. I've got a question for you, Dale, while we're waiting for other people to put some questions into the chat box. Quite often when I'm coaching or leading, and you turn around to say to a female paddler, you can do this, I know you're good enough. How do you get them to believe you?
I suppose that's the hard one, because I'm somebody who could be told by 10 different people that you are capable, and I could still have those self-doubts. But I suppose what happens to me is people tell me I'm capable, and then I do it, and at the end I go, oh, I am capable. I could do that rapid, or I could do that thing. I think it's giving people a safe space as well. So a lot of what people might be worried about before they go down is, well, what if I perhaps go upside down, or what if I don't make this eddy, or so on. And actually, I think for me, almost addressing fears that I have can help a lot. So if I'm doing a rapid and I'm worried about it, actually thinking through, well, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, maybe you capsize on that drop, but there's a massive pool at the bottom. Even if you swam, you're just going to go for a nice refreshing swim to the side, and then you get out again. And actually, I think thinking through my fears sometimes can really help. So perhaps if you do have women or other candidates who are nervous about completing things and you're saying you can do it, actually just saying, well, what is it you're nervous about? For me personally, does help me to think it through. And I am also somebody who doesn't like to look at a rapid for too long. I scout something and I have to be the first person to get in my boat and do it, because otherwise I get too nervous. If I've scouted it, I've got my line and I just get on with it and I don't give myself that time to be nervous. But I'm only in that position because I know that that's what I'm like, and I know I work best if I just do the rapid as soon as I'm ready. Whereas I suppose obviously the people on your courses, they might not be aware themselves and you might not be aware of what works for them, but definitely reassuring them about any worries they have, I think would help a lot. And I'm sure you already do a lot of that already.
Yeah, the last whitewater canoe leader course I was the only one that swam on the whole course.
Oh.
That's another story, and but we won't go into that one. So it wasn't all my fault. Okay, anybody else got any questions?
Oh, Caroline?
Sorry to ask, I was just thinking, if you, I know that I think it's based at home. Pierpoint is the BCU and or whatever it used to be. Sorry, I'm that old. I still call it the BCU. But do you do courses or out in Wales and stuff? Because I wouldn't really want to do it at home pier, but if there was other courses available, it's nice to get on a proper river. I call it a proper, and just to get some nice scenery and fresh air. And I might be interested in coming in something like that.
Is that a question for myself or for Dave?
Well, maybe for Dave. The team, really.
Yeah. You go first, Dave.
No, you go first, Del.
Okay, thank you. I've certainly done courses all over the place. So the coaching perhaps I've done at Home Pierpoint has been more freestyle related. It's very handy for me because it's so close, but it's obviously a very good place if you want to try to do some freestyle kayaking. But it tends to be that I found a course that I would like to go on with a provider I'd like to go on, and it almost hasn't mattered where it is. So for example, Norway, I did want to go to Norway, but it was also the people running that course I thought would be very beneficial to me. I've had days in Wales, so it's north and south, and if you can get down to Dartmoor, that's a wonderful place to go as well. But it's definitely been about, I suppose, what the course is actually offering, and what I've needed at the time.
Thank you.
My advice, Carolyn, is yes, we run courses in Wales. We're on the in Hereford, so we're on the South Wales English border, and we run courses in Wales. But my recommendation to you is find the course you want to do, and then do some research on the provider and make sure that that provider is right for you. And this isn't just the females now. This is everybody. You know, I might not be your cup of tea as an assessor or a coach. Sam's nodding his head furiously. But do a little bit of research. Talk to people. What's so and so like? What's so and so like? What's she like? What's he like? And find the right coach and assessor for you. You know, one of the things the British Canoeing are pushing, that everybody is an individual, and coaches, assessors, and leaders are all different. Go out and find what's right for you, because at the end of the day, as Del said earlier, she's into paddling for fun. So you've got to spend a bit of time doing that research to make sure you're going to enjoy it. That would be my top tip. Sam, we'll talk later. Anybody else got any questions? Oh, GPGIR, whatever that is. I can't pronounce that. I mean, I appreciate I'm dyslexic, but how? Would you like to come on and make your point and talk to us?
Yeah.
Yes, no, nod or shake your head.
No.
No. Okay. Well, that was a nod or a shake and all in one go, wasn't it? Okay. Anybody else got any questions before we finish? Oh yeah, Steve. This will be a good question. There's got to be I say it'll be a good question. It's got to be first time, isn't it?
Well, maybe Dave. Thank you. Hi, Del.
Hi.
What I'd like to ask is, what sort of strategies do you use if you're at the side of the river and you're dealing with somebody who's lacking in confidence and may need just that extra support? How do you approach that?
I suppose my natural instinct, and I suppose I do it with students as well, is I just chat and smile at them to start with, and just have a conversation about something else. So if someone's very nervous, just having them talk about something else to distract them a little bit helps. And then just trying to, I suppose, share some of my confidence with them. I think particularly I've noticed with leading beginners is I never give beginners almost options. I tell them what we're doing. This is like very, very beginners rather than someone who's an intermediate paddler. So for example, if you're about to go down a rapid, just be at the side of the river and say, okay, Dave, what we're going to do now is we're going to get into our kayaks and we're going to choo-choo down the river. I'm going to go first. I want you to keep a boat length behind me, and we're going to aim directly for the eddy on river right, straight at it, paddling hard all the way, and I'll be right in front of you the whole time. And actually not letting people worry about things, I have found helps a lot, particularly with beginners, because when you're learning to kayak, there are so many things to think about that if you say, oh, make sure you really hold this edge here, but also put your paddle out more. Now lean this way, look behind you, it's too much. Whereas actually sometimes just saying, this is what we're doing, nice and simple, okie dokie, off we go. And it lets people enjoy the river, build up a little bit of confidence. And then once they get a couple of those basic skills, then you can start working on one thing at a time. So rather than overwhelming them, just saying, okay, the only thing we're going to do this time is I want you to hold your edge, that's it, keep holding it as we go out. Fantastic, you did a great job that time. And just building people's confidence up almost brick by brick, and trying to really share that confidence from yourself with them if they're perhaps having a day where they're lacking in confidence, is my answer to that, I suppose.
Thanks, Del.
Thank you.
I tend to use video as well, because people think, and I'm not stereotyping, I don't want to fall in, like Andy, don't want to fall into the trap, but women don't think that they look as good on the water as they really are. So sometimes when you video them and you can show them back that video just on your phone, they go, oh, was that really me? Did I do that? And that can really reinforce things as well. It can also work the other way. I've used Sam a couple of times where he thinks he's brilliant, but you need to knock him down a peg or two. Any more questions from anybody? There's some really good bits of chat going on in the chat, which if you want to bring that out into discussion, that's great. But if not, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to thank you, Del. Brilliant chat. Some really good.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. It's some great conversation. For those of you that are new to our paddle chats, what happens now is I take Charlie for a walk, my Labrador for a walk, and I'll leave you in the capable hands of Lewis and Nat, and they sit up till God knows what time in the morning talking rubbish. And you don't have to sit up till the middle of the night with them, but if you want to have a chat, I suggest sticking around having a chat. The chats are quite interesting and quite humorous at times. So thank you ever so much, Del. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This was a With Dave production.